You're making me uncomfortable. Can you have headphones in at least? I don't like it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, if you don't already know me, and I love to talk all things personal finance, organization, and lifestyle. And today's video is going to be the long-awaited Italy/Europe travel budget breakdown, or exactly how much money I spent on my trip to Italy. If you are new here, my boyfriend and me just got back from a 2-week trip to Italy. We went to London initially, and then we flew to Milan/Lake Como. Then we went to Florence, Naples, Capri, Amalfi, lots of destinations, and we wanted to enjoy this trip to the fullest. We saved up for a long time for this trip, so I was fully prepared to have a luxurious time while there and not to think too much about money and finances. If you are new as well, you might not know, I regularly go through my monthly budgets and cover all things personal finance. So if you're interested in that type of content, you should subscribe. I have been saving up for this trip all throughout 2024, even into 2023. I have a lot of money set aside for this sort of thing, but you guys are gonna see that some unexpected finances came up. So this should definitely get interesting. Why don't we just dive in, because we have a lot to cover. I'm gonna go through every single transaction and walk you guys through exactly how much it cost us to go to Italy for 2 weeks in 2024. All right, I have my budget spreadsheet pulled up here, and I'm going to reflect that for you guys. If you are new here, I sell this budget tracker on Etsy. I will leave it in the description box down below. Although that this specific page, which I've called my travel Italy page, this is very like personalized. I just totally edited a monthly spreadsheet to work for the Italy budget breakdown. As you will see over here, this is the regular October page. You can track your income, expenses, bills, savings, investments, credit cards, debt. I am just showing you guys an altered version of that with just my travel related expenses. Let's have a look at the expense table. I have added in the budgeted values that I budgeted in my October reset video. If you haven't checked it out, I will leave it in the cards up above. But I separated my travel budget from my regular monthly budget, and I had a bunch of numbers that I was hoping to hit for that. And I've also added in a couple of random budgeted values for things that weren't actually included in that budget breakdown. You can see here the flights, hotels, trains were all additional things that were not included in my regular budget breakdown, just because I don't track those things on a month-to-month basis. But I just added in values randomly for those because I didn't actually budget for those. I just made it so it didn't go red, if that makes sense. So you can see here that the total expenses for the trip was $51.20. And there's actually some additional costs that I will talk about at the very end of the video. I have a little bit of a story time to get into at the end, but we will go through everything first. And this is basically everything that I spent on my trip, excluding that little lump sum that I'm going to talk about at the end. Okay, so let's have a little walk through this, and then I'll go through the transactions at the end. So my budgeted value for groceries spent on the trip was $100, and we were far below that at $62.80. We didn't actually get as many groceries as I thought we would. Our longest stay was in a Florence Airbnb, and the kitchen was really, really small and just like difficult to deal with. So we made quick and easy things, typically for breakfast: toast, Greek yogurt, things like that. So it was very minimal groceries compared to what I was expecting. So we were under budget there at $62. Our transportation costs were above what I expected. And I think I was a little bit naive when I was budgeting for this trip, because I forgot how much it costs just to get around. Like, even just taking public transport can be really expensive in places like London. So expensive in London. But I wasn't like crazy amount over, so I was $343 total instead of the $250 that I budgeted. Eating out, I was actually below, which I'm actually very, very shocked by. I budgeted $1,300 for eating out. And yeah, this number is very shocking to me because we ate out a lot. We indulged on our meals. We were getting appetizers, desserts, cappuccinos at the end, bottles of wine. We were balling out at our meals. I will say we did usually only have like one big meal a day. And then outside of that, we would just grab like quick, cheaper lunches. And then we usually had groceries for breakfast or a free breakfast that was included with our accommodation. So I guess that probably makes sense as to why it's not as expensive. But I didn't even break apart the dinners where we got a bottle of wine. A lot of this wasn't even spent on food alone. It was spent on like bottles of wine at dinner and food. So yeah, I am very surprised to see this number as low as it is, but happy to see it nonetheless. Coffee was under budget by $3. We spent $97 each on coffee. Oh yes, I should mention that the way that me and my boyfriend split up expenses on this trip is we split everything down the middle. We used our couple's credit card for a lot of expenses, and then we also used my Neo MasterCard because my Neo MasterCard, I added a travel bundle for the month, meaning I get cash back on all foreign currencies with that travel bundle. So I like using that card because it kind of counteracts the conversion rate when it's converting from euros to Canadian. So I did get a good amount of cash back with that card. I think it was about $65 cash back just by using that card exclusively for the trip. That is kind of how we were spending money. We did have a gifted amount of 200 euros that we used on this trip that I did not total up here. I didn't keep receipts for things that we bought with those euros. So there is an additional 200 euros that was spent, but a lot of it was spent on like gifts or like a bag I bought for myself. So just other asides. What else was I trying to say? Oh yes, so basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna split the credit card balances at the end of this down the middle, pay them off together. And so this is like my half of everything that was spent. So it should be a very equal portion of the trip. It wasn't like either one of us was paying for a lot more than the other person, is my point. Okay, so yeah, my portion for coffee, $100 basically. So perfectly on budget, great for me. Drinking and cannabis, obviously no cannabis, just alcohol. This is at $304, so under budget. Definitely should be higher because as I mentioned, I didn't break apart bottles of wine from like a dinner, but I think because we're under budget in both, I don't really care. So that is great to see. Fun, we spent $215 of the total $250. So once again, just under budget. So I thought my budget was really dumb for this trip. While I was on the trip, I think as you're spending and you feel like you're spending so much money, I was like, oh my God, my budget was so off. I think I even said that in my vlogs. I think I've mentioned it a couple times in the vlogs, like I did a stupid budget for this trip. But for a lot of these categories, I was actually like perfectly on the nose. So that's always great. But the total amount we spent on flights was $832.91, which is crazy if you think about it, because we flew Vancouver to London, London to Milan, and then Naples to London, London to Vancouver. There's a whole side story I'm going to get into at the very end of this video. But as we left on this trip, this is how much I spent on flights. And that is primarily because of credit card points. I basically used every single credit card point I had up to this date for this trip. I used it on accommodations and also flights. So I paid very little for flights going into the trip. And yeah, that's a very cool thing about credit cards. As I mentioned, there's a little something coming up. You're gonna see, it's gonna sting. Okay, but we'll move on to hotels. We spent $1,085, which I think is also very good. As I mentioned, a lot of our hotel stays, I use credit card points to counteract like the big amounts of it. And I will walk through exactly how much we spent on each hotel. If I remember the original amount before the credit card points, I will let you know, but I don't know if I have all of that information. Gifts, we did not budget anything for gifts, and I ended up buying a lot of gifts on this trip. I will cover that when we go through transactions, but yes, we bought more gifts than expected. Travel, so this is the category that I actually think I budgeted originally like $200. So I'm actually gonna put it back to 200. Another category I didn't really budget for accurately, and this is sort of additional to the transportation of like, it just costs so much money to get around. There's just costs that come up that don't really fit squarely into another category. So this is sort of my category for things that I just didn't know where else to put, and they can get expensive when traveling. These are the unforeseen costs that we all forget to remember. And then trains, total spent on trains was $280. Okay, let's get through the expenses. Very beginning of our trip, we had only paid some of the hotels up front. Some of them were charged as we were leaving for the trip. So this is one of the hotels that was charged. And this was the other half of the Airbnb. I think I put 50% of it down when I first booked, and then the other 50% got taken out when we left. So the total amount was $500. My half was $250. I picked seats for us on our long haul flight. So from Vancouver to London, and it was there and back. We paid for the seats because we wanted to be together. It's obviously like a 9.5-hour flight. So we didn't want to be seated separately, so that was $100 for the seats. Then I paid for a checked bag another shitty cost. I did not remember this being as expensive as it was. It used to be like 50 bucks and now it's 75. Then when we left as well was another hotel that got charged to our account. So our hotel in Naples, which was $438 for 2 nights, got charged. So my half was $220. I bought some books for my travels. I bought three total books for my travels. So total for the 3 books was $37. I bought this all on my Kindle and that was charged to the couple's Amex, but I did not divide that by 2 because those are my books. Transportation, we did a $19 Uber to the airport. My boyfriend bought us a converter. We realized the morning of we didn't have a converter for, you know, EU plugins. He bought that day of. That was $33, which is so expensive. I think he might have bought something else. I can't remember. Next up, so this was a surprise charge that we did not anticipate. We were supposed to stay with our friends in London, in North London, the whole time we were in London, but we realized we had a really early flight from London Gatwick on the Monday morning. We landed Saturday afternoon. Monday morning, we had an 8 a.m. flight out of London Gatwick. And once we trained to their place, we were like, oh my God, it's gonna be like a 1.5 to 2 hour train ride to get to London Gatwick. So we decided to book a last minute hotel in the London Gatwick area, and that was $117 total, and my half was $58. We had our first dinner in London at Mildred's. It's like a vegan restaurant. It was amazing. It was $75 for my half. I didn't realize that we paid for each of our portion. I thought we split this. So I first thought that my portion was only $37 and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But you will see further down, because it was charged to the couple's Amex and to the Neo MasterCard, I just divided the 2 amounts by 2. We're basically like splitting the transactions, even though we paid individually, because we're basically just dividing these 2 credit cards down the middle. This is just half of the total at Mildred's. It should be $75. Because we wanted to do the London Gatwick hotel situation, but we also didn't want to have to like travel back and forth on the Sunday when we had like a full day in London. We stored our luggage at King's Cross Station, and that was $22 total and $11 for my portion. We had some drinks with our friends. They like were our tour guides all day, and we ended up buying a round just for all of us, just to say thank you. So that total was $51.57 and my portion was $25. We got a coffee round for our friends who let us stay with them. This was like another group of friends. We got a coffee round because they were letting us stay with them, and we just picked up the bill. Total was $30.34 and my half was $15. Then was the trains in, oh actually, sorry, this is the Metro bus from the train station to where we were staying in London Gatwick. So there was like a bus we had to get on. The total was $9.16. My half was $4.58. We also ate out on the Sunday night at a restaurant called Punjab. It was an incredible Indian restaurant. Very expensive though. It was $98 total for the 2 of us with no alcoholic beverages. Like that was just basically the food. So my half was $49. London is very expensive. Very expensive. I was shocked by it. We got a baked good and 2 coffees at a place in Covent Gardens. That came to $26.58. My half was $13. We got a day pass for the Metro. So a total day pass for me was $17. So the day pass was $34 for both of us. Does that make sense? I thought we paid it individually. You know what? This might be $34 per person, but this might be the one where we're like, we put it individually on each of our credit cards, but we're still dividing it down the middle. So I think it was $34 for like a full day pass for me, which is so expensive to take the train for 1 day. It was like a lot of zones because we were going like, you know, very north and very south, but still $34 per person for transportation on a single day for training is so high. Then we had an Uber ride to the London Gatwick airport. Total was $30-something. My half was $17. We got an Uber ride to Bellagio. So this is once we touched down in Lake Como. We were trying to catch a bus from Lake Como to Bellagio. It comes once an hour, and there's this crazy system in place where lines just aren't a thing in Italy. We really noticed this when we were there. If you want to walk up and just like go to the front of a line and stand near there and then be the first person on the bus, like it's like the way to do it there. So we were in this long line. We were being respectful. We got to the back of the line for this bus. The bus came, it was already like 75% full. So like hardly anyone could get on. Most people that got on were standing with luggages. And then on top of that, people had just walked up off the train and were standing near the front, and they got on even though everyone else in the line was waiting patiently. So it was starting to rain. We were already there for like an hour. We were really tired. This is at the end of like a really long travel day. So we ended up paying for an Uber from Como to Bellagio, which is about an hour drive, and that was $110. And I mean, I would do it again in an instant. I was just upset that we had waited that full hour before doing it. We should have just done it from the beginning, but we didn't think that the bus would be such a big pain in the ass. So that was spent. Then we're looking at my other credit card. This is my Neo credit card, so I might jump back in time a little bit. I paid for my travel perk on my credit card. It was like a partway through the month, so I didn't have to pay the full $8, I think it is. So I only paid $6.96. As I mentioned, we're splitting the balance on these two cards, so my portion is $3.48. We got Cafe Nero in London. This was $13.80 for the both of us. My portion was $6.90. Okay, now this is the Saturday train ride. So the total for both of us to get day passes was $58.50. So my portion was $29. So I think this actually ended up being cheaper than when we were just tapping in and out. So that is good to know. Still $30, so expensive for one day of training. Then we went to Greg's. We had to go to Greg's. We heard lots of good things about Greg's. Apparently it's like the London version of Tim Hortons. And we got a vegetable little like breakfast thing, but total was $10.76. This is absolutely the cheapest meal we got in London. My portion was $5.38, and I kind of wish we went there another time because it was just so affordable. Then the second day train travels, this is what I meant, how like me and David both paid for our individual days, but because they're on the cards that we're splitting in half, this is like the second portion of the transportation. So that $34 divided by 2 once again. Then I got a coffee in the Covent Gardens area. That was $7.27. In 2 is $3.64. This is the other Crawley bus, the Metro bus. There's like 2 of these. So my portion was $3.68 for the bus. Next up, we got breakfast at the Gatwick airport before we flew to Milan. This was $34.96 for my portion. So total $70. What the F for breakfast? I think we got like 2 plates and then 2 coffees, and this was $70. Insane. I guess airports always mark you up. This next charge, I don't know what it is. It was a random charge of like $5. Probably like a bus or like a water at some point, but I had no idea what it was from. So that was $2.58 for my portion. Here's the other portion of the Mildred's, $75 divided by 2. Same restaurant, as I mentioned, just the 2 cards, paid individually, but splitting down the middle. Then we have trains to Lake Como. So this is just like the train ticket we bought at the airport. Once we got off, we went to the trains. We took 2 trains from Milan to get to Lake Como. My portion was $17. We then had lunch. So this is while we were waiting for that bus in Lake Como. We had a pizza lunch, and that came to $30 for my portion. Once again, also expensive. Like $30 for lunch just for my half is wild. Next up, we have an unfortunate charge. So I paid for what I thought was my check bag and then David's carry-on for the EasyJet flight. But apparently EasyJet lets you pay for a carry-on size bag that you're gonna check, and then they call it hand baggage. It was the most confusing thing I've ever heard of in my life. But basically David walks up with his carry-on and they were like, you didn't pay for a carry-on. And I was like, I clearly did, it's here. And they're like, no, you had to check that. I was like, why? Why would I check a carry-on bag? It was $88 for the bag, and my portion is $43.95. We went to a place called Madison in Bellagio for coffee and a couple of croissants. My portion was $7.93. That's actually a good price. I think we got pistachio croissants. I was also feeling quite sick when we were in Como, so I picked up Vapor Rub at the pharmacy. That was $8.62 for my half. Oh, $17 for Vapor Rub. That's bizarre. Maybe it's an imported good. Next up, we had the ferries to Varena. So we were in Bellagio and we took a ferry to Varena, and that was $28 total. So my half is $14. This day was raining most of the day, so we spent a lot of the day inside restaurants having drinks and food. This is Aperols and coffees. Where was that? Oh yes, when we got to Varena, we sat outside on a patio and we had a couple Aperols and some coffees. The total for that was $37. My portion was $18.63. We had a dinner in Como. This was $134 divided by 2. My portion is $67. We did have a bottle of wine with this. We had an appy, we had a dessert, we had affogatos. We went all out. So $134, not awful for what we got. And then we had our expensive lunch. I think I mentioned this in the vlog, but we ended up going to this like beautiful hotel to sit out for the rain, and we got 2 glasses of like a sparkling wine and then a pasta that we shared, and then a mixed salad. And the bill came out and we realized that it was 20 euros per glass of the sparkling wine that we got. So this was a very expensive lunch that was not like much food at all. 137 total, so $68. So it was more than that like bougie dinner where we got a bottle of wine, which is crazy. Next, we have the ferry from Bellagio to Como, and this was $45, and my portion was $22. Then I got a coffee and a pistachio croissant in the train station. This was like my breakfast for the day. That was $17.92. My portion was $8.96. Then we paid our tax at our hotel in Bellagio. Anytime in Italy you leave a hotel, they charge you like a tourism tax. So our portion for that was $18.54. My half was $9.27. Then we had a lunch as soon as we got to Florence. We had to wait for our Airbnb to open up. We had like a couple hours of overlap time. So we went to Shea Cafe right near the train station. I got like a bowl and a coffee. David got some food as well. And the total was $39.41, and my portion was $19.71. While walking to our Airbnb, David saw some gelato, so he got a gelato, and that was $9.27. Down the middle is $4.64. We then bought tickets to go see David, statue by Michelangelo. So we went to the Galleria dell'Accademia di Firenze. Sorry, my portion for the ticket entry was $48.54. We got some groceries as soon as we got there. This was the most expensive grocery store ever. I think we got coffee, a loaf of bread, 2 Greek yogurt, little like individual portions, bananas, and Nutella. That's all we got, and it was $44. I had like this tiny little bag of groceries, and I was like doing the math of the euros, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. So yeah, very expensive. Then this charge, I wasn't sure what it was. It says Tiger Italia. I don't know what it is. I just put it under fun. That was $9.27 total. My portion is $4.64. Then we went on a winery tour. This was our second day in Florence. We had a big kerfuffle with the winery tour. So basically we got on the wrong bus. We walked up to this area where they were doing like the check-in for the tours, and there was like 7 other groups checking in that same day at the exact same spot. Very dumb idea. And then it started to torrentially rain. We just asked a woman if we were in her group. She said yes. We got on that bus. Turns out we were not in the group. She had improperly told us we were in the group. We basically had to pay for the tour that we were on the bus for, and we missed our actual tour we paid for. You will see later on, I did pay for the other tour, but they refunded me 50% of it. And this tour was actually cheaper than the one we paid for. So all in all, we ended up paying the same amount for a cheaper tour. So we overpaid for a tour, but like it was the same amount we expected to spend anyway. This was the tour we went on. My half was $85. Then we had a couple of wine glasses at the first stop. We went to a Chianti winery, and I got a couple glasses of wine. I don't know if we got like a gift. Did we get a gift at that winery? Oh, we got a bottle of wine. Okay, yeah. So the bottle was $10, and then the 2 glasses was 8.5. So, I mean, my portion. My glass of wine was 8.5. My half of the bottle of wine was $10. Then we went to the second winery on the winery tour. We also got a glass of wine there. It was a Chianti Classico, like one of the top rated ones in the world. So a glass was very expensive. It was $15 for my glass. And then we got some gifts from this winery that we're gonna do gifts for all of our friends and family for Christmas. We got like a big box of stuff that's being sent, so we didn't have to transport it home. My half for the gift plus tax, there was a lot of tax, $72 total with tax, but my half for this gift, which is going to be part of my Christmas gifts, so you know, it was money I was going to spend on people anyway, and that was $200. I'm getting out of breath from all these transactions. Then we went and got gelato. This place was called La Sorbeteria. My half was $7.69. It was a very good gelato, I will say, even though it was expensive. Then we had our first dinner in Florence. This was at a place called Ciro and Sons. It was like a more general restaurant, but my half was $44. This is without any alcoholic beverages. This was just like a pizza and a pasta. Then we went to Mercato Centrale and we got some biscottis. We got this giant bag of biscottis for 10 euros, which is quite a bit for biscottis, but they were the best biscottis I've ever had. I was so mad that we didn't get another bag and bring them home. So my half was $8. Then we went to Il Bottegone Coffees. This was right near the Duomo. It was very expensive for coffees and baked goods. This total was $27. My half was $13.90. This was a cappuccino and a croissant. Then we went to Il Girone de Giotti. I'm gonna butcher all these names, but this is one of the famous sandwich on focaccia places. The total for the 2 sandwiches was $21, and this was such a cheap lunch. We were like, we need to go there again. My half was $10.80. This is another charge I wasn't sure of. I have no idea what this was. I couldn't figure it out, so that was $7. I think this actually is David's, one of his subscriptions for his sports. It was charged USD, so I don't know why that's in there. Then after the winery, we went out to a pub later on, and then after the pub, it was late, it was like 2 in the morning. We wanted some late night food. We got a Mr. Pizza, very cheap pizza, $16 for a margarita pizza, and my half was $8. Then we went for dinner that same night before the pub, and this was called Osteria del Pavone, and it was one of the best meals we've had. Highly recommend it in Florence. It was such a good meal. We had the best, I think it was the best pasta I've ever had. I think I said that in my vlog. We went all out, appetizer, mains, dessert, cappuccinos, bottle of wine as well. So this was definitely, I think, the most expensive meal we had, but definitely the best meal we also had. So I would do this again. $181 total, and my half was $90.75. Then that same night, this was like the pub night, we went to a cocktail bar. We got 2 cocktails. The total was $31. My half was $15. Then we went to the bar that I was talking about, or the pub. There was live music. We got a couple drinks there. Total was $13.96 for my half. Next day, we went and got some more groceries. We went to a proper grocery store, and it was way more reasonable. It was only $30. I grabbed a bunch of stuff. This was in my second vlog. So my half was $14.96. Then we have the charges for the tours. So this is like all of our tours. I just went through my TD visa and did all the tours. I booked them all through Viator. So this is the tour we did not go on. It was $271 total. We got $135 back, divided by 2. That's $67. So the total for that one day of winery tour was like $85 plus that $67. I bought a SIM card. This was a jetpack SIM card. It was $14, an eSIM. We had our pasta class in Florence. So my half of the pasta class was $97. Incredible cooking class. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was also unlimited wine, so definitely paid for itself, and we got to eat the food afterward. Then we also did a pizza making class in Naples. That was $68. Then we have some ferries, Omeo ferries. I believe these are the ferries to Capri, there and back for me and David. Total was $135. My half is $67. We did a boat tour when we were in Capri. This was $75 total. My half was $37. And I also got an Airalo eSIM. That was $18.50 for the eSIM. I should have just done the jetpack one from the jump. It was 10 gigs and it was Europe wide. I did the specific Airalo ones for London and Italy, and I ran out of the amount very quickly. I only got like 3 gigs for those 2, so they were more expensive and there was a lot less gigs. So I would do jetpack next time. We went to a cafe. I imagine this is in Florence still. This was Cafe Del Mark. My half was $3.88. I think this was just a cappuccino. Then we went to Mercato Centrale again and we got some food. I got a pasta. My half was $10.86. This same day we had, at the same meal, David got like a little risotto ball. That was only $7.58. So my half was $3.79. We went to Vivoli this day and we got affogatos. $12 for an affogato. Once you do the conversion. We did get the pistachio one, which was more expensive, but yeah, not a cheap affogato, I'll say that. We went to Vips Bar at Piazzale Michelangelo. We got 2 Aperol spritzes, bottle of water, and every time you get a spritz, you get like a little plate of snacks. Honestly, for like a cocktail and then all the snacks we had, we basically were full after this and didn't have to get lunch. So this kind of paid off, $17.46. We went to Bebe to go to one of the wine windows, the little wine windows in Florence. So my half for the bill was $10.86. I got a glass of Lambrusco. Then we went to Trattoria Giovanni for dinner this night. I don't think we got a bottle. I think we just got 2 glasses of wine each. So that kind of explains why it was a little bit cheaper. My half was $48.56. Then this is the risotto bowl I talked about already. We got Sabrino gelato that night. My half was $6.96. A little bit cheaper than the other spot for the same amount of gelato. I don't know, this was a charge for something I didn't really recognize, but my half was $4.66. Then we went to Al Antico Vinao. So this is like a very common, that same like focaccia sandwich situation that I went to earlier. This is like the more popular spot. This was $17 for my sandwich. Very expensive. We were very full after that and it was delicious and I recommend. We went to Osteria Belladonna for lunch, I think, one day. I don't remember what this was exactly, but my half was $15.54. Then this was the night of the pasta cooking class. I'm kind of jumping around timeline here. We met a bunch of Americans and had a really good time with them. We went to an Irish bar and then did a bit of a pub crawl after that. So there was a lot of expenses spent on drinks on this night. So this is a round of drinks. I think we all rotated buying a round of drinks for each other. This is 2 rounds, one for me, one for David. And then I also got 2 additional drinks on this bill as well. So my half for that is $38.46. Then this is Fratelli Cuore. This is the same. So I think this is a couple days later. I don't know exactly what this is for, but my half is $3.11. Probably like a snack or coffee or something. This is another Irish pub round. So David had an additional Irish pub round on his card. So this is $23. Then we went to groceries. So this, I'm sorry, the timeline's gonna jump around quite a bit here, but then we went for groceries in Naples. Groceries were so cheap there. We got like a decent amount of groceries and it was only $6.76 for my half. Then we went to a place called Blanco. I think this is coffee, or I don't know, something like that. $2.34 for my half. We got gelato. My half was $4.89, also in Naples. Bought Ferris Amalfi while we were there. My half was $77.69. This was round trip there and back from Naples. We actually on the way back had our ferry canceled, so I should be getting half of this amount back. I should get like $35 for my half back. And there's Pasticceria bar. Oh yes, before we got a pizza at a place, I think we went to this bar and we got 2 Aperol spritzes and my half was $6.96. Very reasonable. We found Naples way cheaper, way more reasonable price. Florence was very expensive. This was another Mr. Pizza. So this is going back to that Irish pub night. This was the same pizza, the same margarita pizza. We needed late night food once again. And this was my half. Then we had Il Toscanaccio. Oh, this was our breakfast before we got on the train. So my half was $37, very expensive. I had a scramble and Dave had like a little toast and 2 coffees. So I don't know why that was so expensive. Then we had a coffee somewhere. This was, my half was $7.74. Then we went to Ristorante Bucapoldo. Was this in Naples? I don't remember where this was, but my half for dinner was $66, $133 total. Oh, this was a London charge that I didn't see until later on when I was putting in my expenses. We went to this little wine bar on one of the days and my half for the wine bar was $22. That was for 1 glass of wine. London, what the F? We had a dinner in Bellagio as well at a place called Blake or B Lake. We couldn't figure out if it was like supposed to be segregated, but my half for that was $57.86. Then we have entry to the Duomo. So this is like the big chapel in the middle of Florence. Our entry to go up to the bell tower was $30.75. Then we had Red Garter Bar. This is the pub crawl night. We went to a nightclub, so our half for whatever we bought there was $34. We got some gifts for ourselves / the office, so I'm bringing some chocolates to my work, saving with Dave. This for my half was $32.47. Then we had a lunch on the last day in Florence. This is called Il Santo Belvatore was the restaurant, and we really wanted to go there. They were not available for dinner, so we went for lunch. My half was $39.81. We took an Uber from the Naples train station to our Airbnb. My half was $14.69. We went to a coffee shop. My coffee was $5.44 in Naples. I wouldn't be surprised if we got like a baked good as well, because that seems a little bit high for Naples. In Capri, we got, I think, 3 total spritzes. David had 2, I had 1, and then we had a bunch of snacks while there. $32 for my portion. They were very, very good spritzes, and the manager kept on bringing me and David more and more snacks. Like she brought us like 2 rounds of snacks, dessert, a random bruschetta as well. Like we basically had a full lunch for this price, so I feel like that was a good value. Another coffee, I think, $7.77. We took the chairlifts in Capri up to the top of the mountain. That was $21.75 per person. It was like a round trip. You got to ride down the chairlift as well. We had a pasta and some drinks in Anna Capri for like an early dinner. That was $34 for my half. We got a lemon sorbet, like, you know, like the lemons and they core them out and put lemon sorbet in there. We got one of those. It was €8, so $12 total for one sorbet, but it was so good. Highly recommend. $6.20 for my half. This was another spritz before dinner. So this was $5.83 for a spritz. We each got 1, so also a good price. And then we had Sorbio's Pizza in Naples, and this was a delicious pizza spot. So delicious. And I think it was the best pizza we had on the entire trip. And that was $21.39 for my half. Then we have Cafe Bistro's coffee. I don't know, $4.28. I got a little gift, $4.67 for my half. We went and saw a Caravaggio art piece in Naples, and we saw like the whole gallery there. So that was $15.50 for entry. We had a folded pizza, just like a quick folded pizza for lunch. So cheap, $3.88. We split that. So my half is $1.94. Another coffee, $5.05. I got a gift for someone in my life. That was $107.30. This is not divided by 2 because it's like my gift I'm buying. And we got a taxi. I don't know what this is for, but it was $10.11. Another coffee, probably another baked good, $9.33. We went to a supermercato in Amalfi. I don't remember what this was. Oh, this was another gift. We bought a gift. So this was $6.29 for my half. Then we had dinner in Amalfi. This was a very expensive dinner. So $58 for my half for that. We had a coffee and a baked good after that dinner in Amalfi. So 2 coffees, 1 baked good, $12.40. On my birthday, when we were in Amalfi, we rented beach chairs on like the famous beaches. So that portion was $15.50. It was only €10 per person, which is really good because they said in the summer they charge upwards of like 20 to 30 euros for the same chairs. And then we got served at that chair. So we got a couple drinks on my birthday. So that my half was $30.22. We got some coffees right after that, $6.98 for my half. And we also got some gelato after that, which was $6.20 for my half. We split 1 gelato. So this was $12 gelato just for like one little thing. Crazy. And then we were also hungry and we grabbed a little folded pizza on our way out. And that was only $3.10 for my half. So cheaper than the gelato. When we checked out of our hotel in Amalfi, we had to pay like tourist tax. I think they also charged us for like, they brought up champagne and a birthday cake for my birthday, but I think they charged us for it. So that's why this is so high, but $33 for my half. Then we had Life Fruit Bar Amalfi. I don't know what that is, but $3.09 for that. I paid for my bag to get back on Air Canada, and I will explain why this is so annoying in a little bit. My portion for the bag was $81. I didn't divide this by 2 because it was my bag. We got food in Naples on our last day there, a lunch. This was like 2 burgers. We got veggie burgers and fries. It was the most disgusting veggie burger I've ever had in my life. So I put so gross after. That was $21.46 for my half. Then we had our final Uber to the Naples airport, which was $23.17. And then we had a sandwich and coffees in the airport for $20.40. And now you're gonna see the unfortunate charge that I was talking about. So we had to pay for flights to get home. Basically, when we showed up to the Naples airport at 6 a.m. for our 8 a.m. flight, we went to check in and we just saw the board up and it said canceled. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean canceled? And we talked to the woman and she's like, yep, it's canceled. You've automatically been rebooked on a flight at 7 p.m. today. It's 6 a.m. We had a 2 p.m. flight leaving out of London. So we were supposed to get into London at 10. Same airport, Heathrow. We had 4 hours to pick up our bag, recheck in, redo security, and then get on our flights. Not that much time realistically with all of that. Yeah, they couldn't get us on an earlier flight until 7 p.m. We explained how frustrating that was. We looked for any other flights to get to London. There was nothing that got us there on time. So we both knew we were gonna miss our flight in London. David called Air Canada and realized he had booked a basic flight. So he was told that there was nothing they could do. If he missed that flight, he'd lose all of his money that he paid. And then on top of that, he would have to book a flight home. We looked up flights in London, from London to Vancouver. They were $21.50 from London to Vancouver. We also had a 7 p.m. flight out of Naples. So we would have had to sleep in the Heathrow airport. We asked British Airways if they would be able to cover our hotel because they had the cancellation and they told us they weren't sure and they couldn't tell us anything until we were in London. So all of this frustration, we realized, okay, if we're already gonna spend $21.50 anyway to get home, we may as well just try to get home as early as possible. So basically what we were supposed to do is like get on the next day flight, the same flight that we were supposed to be on Saturday. On Sunday, we would have got it home at 5. We would have had to pick up our cats and then work the next day. And I really just didn't want to do that. David already was gonna have to spend the $21.50 anyway. And we found a flight from Naples all the way home with a connection in Amsterdam. It would get us home at the exact same time we were supposed to be home anyway. And we had like 2 hours before it took off. So we ended up buying 2 of those flights. My half was $21.98. I think we upped it so that it was like fully cancelable in case the same thing happened again. So it could have been cheaper, but we just didn't do the basic rate is basically what we did. Just in case the same thing happened, I was like, I've been burned by the basic rate. I'm not doing that again. So we did $21.98 to get home. So this is like, you know, $40 more, but we didn't have to deal with the overnight stay in London Heathrow / a 13-hour stay in the Naples airport. So painful. And trust me, I was like sobbing my eyes out in the Naples airport, and it was just really frustrating that both airlines just obviously don't give a shit. I don't think any airlines give shit about people anymore, and it's just really frustrating, and I feel like canceled flights are way more common these days than they used to be. So this is my PSA. If you're gonna book flights, especially a flight with a connection, don't get the basic rate, because you are gonna be in the hole if something happens, like something completely out of your control can happen. We should be getting a chunk of change back from British Airways. I think they give out minimum 250 euros for flight cancellations on top of being refunded for our flight. We should have a little bit of this taken down, but you know, unfortunately we needed to get home, and I was at the point where I was like, I will pay whatever it costs to just be home. I was so frustrated. We also had a ferry cancellation the day before and had to take like the bus ride from hell. So yeah, it just came at a really shitty time. It was kind of like it put a little bit of a souring on the end of our trip. So I think like when people asked us how our trip was at the very end, we were like, don't ask us right now. We're like still simmering from all of this. Overall, it was an amazing trip, and I don't want this to taint the situation. But also, PSA, please have an emergency fund when you go on trips. You can plan for everything in the world and things can still come out completely out of your control. So luckily I have a very solid emergency fund, and this will be 100% coming from there. And yeah, I basically spent more than I expected to on this trip because of this, and I will have to tap into my emergency fund even though I fully budgeted for this trip. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then this coffee is at home. This should not be in the travel budget. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna go through some of the costs that happened before we left on the trip, and then I will close out this video. This has been a lot longer than I expected. Okay, so total I spent on my flight to get to London round trip. We did London to Vancouver round trip, and then we just bought little flights in Europe. So my portion, because I used like 100,000 credit card points, I only had to pay 286. So it wasn't like that big of a loss for me, but David spent a lot more on the flight, so it was really unfortunate for him. Our flight from London to Milan was $111 for my half, very reasonable, but then we did have to spend that 80 something dollars on the bag. Lake Como accommodation, so this was 2 nights in Lake Como. I did put some points down on this. I can't remember exactly how much, but my half for this was $113, so very reasonable. Our Florence accommodation, I think total was $1,000. We did not use any points or anything towards this. So for my portion that I paid before the trip, obviously I covered the portion that was charged in the month of October, but for my portion that was spent before October was $250. Then our trains from Florence to Naples was $144 for my portion. And the train from Lake Como to Florence was $136 for my portion. So my ticket, I should say. Our Como hotel, wait, oh no, this is Amalfi. I don't know why I put Como. I was like, what? Amalfi. So for the Amalfi hotel, our total 2-night stay in Amalfi was a very bougie, nice hotel room. It was my birthday. I really wanted to go all out. Total was $982. I used points and a travel credit for my new credit card I got. So I only spent $151. I think it was $302 that was owed after the points and everything. And then our British Airways flight that we should be refunded for, but we paid beforehand, was $135. So that is the total Italy budget. And I have been speaking for an hour, so this is gonna be a nightmare. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry for how long that was and how long it took me to go through all the expenses, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know some of you guys were really interested in how much money we spent on our total Italy trip. I wanted to cover the totals after the flight. So I took it out of the original amount because I just wanted to like show the actual amount we would have spent had things not gone awry. So if I take off this deduction, so total was $7,300 all in, everything we spent on this trip. Very expensive, but I think I spent $6,000 when I went to Greece for 10 days last year. So I think overall, had that flight thing not happened, I would have been very happy with the amount we spent, and it would have been exactly how much I budgeted. But yeah, things come up as we covered, and hopefully we get some money back and it helps us offset some of that cost. But okay, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this sort of video, and if you like other sort of personal finance types of videos, I do these often, so you should subscribe, and please give this video a like and leave me a comment. I'd love to see you guys' comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.